ocean. I'm at the bottom of the sea. I'm at the bottom of the ocean. Don't know if I'll make it back home.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Super Show. It is the SEC preview show. Last week we previewed the ACC, broke down all the teams. Today we're going to be breaking down all 14 SEC teams. Thanks to those of you that are checking us out live and on demand. My name, of course, is Walter Waddell, aka Dubdeuce85 on all social media. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and partner in crime, Pete. Pete, how are you this evening, my man?
So I see you got a haircut. I just noticed that.
Yeah, went back to the old style. It's a little too hot for me to grow my hair out, but I'm going to do it again next month.
Yeah, it's blazing hot in middle of August in Florida. But doing research today on SEC for the show has got me pumped up. We did the ACC last week. That was cool. But this week, I was really into it this week. Getting that blood going, juices flowing. So what do we have? Less than 2 weeks, right? Like a week and a half away from, you said, opening day. So there's a lot going on. We're still, still grinding MLB every day, but now the cool stuff starts. CFL week 3 we got going on. Everybody can check out our show from that. That starts at 10 o'clock. Week 3, all your WNBA stuff. So it's a good time at YFC right now. Some good shit going on.
Yeah, and with the week 1 is on September 4th. That slates up a 13-gamer, but then what we refer to as week 0, they just posted that actually a 3-gamer. So there's going to be a show breakdown for that. We'll have podcasts, write-ups. You're going to be covering showdowns. So much CFB stuff to talk about. It's a weekly CFL show. I'm doing daily WNBA. You're doing daily MLB. Right now, we're running a promotion where the first 2 months are $50. Price of 1 month is $25. Gets you access to our player pools, our articles, top play articles, cheat sheets, prize picks articles, Discord premium only shows, pretty much everything that you could possibly need to be a successful player. We cover betting as well, sports betting. We even talk about NFT and sports cards. We've got a channel in our Discord for pretty much everything. To keep, the community going. So lots of good stuff here. College football is on the horizon with week 0 ahead. Now we're going to be starting, to have real fun and make this big money. There's $50K to first GPPs in the lobby for college football. So it's time to get this in order and let's just get started here. I'm going to talk about Tennessee first. Afterwards, we're going to go team by team. I'll just kick it over to Pete. He'll talk about a team, then I'll kick it back to me. Kind of keep the show flowing a little bit and keep us on our toes. So first team I'm going to talk about is the Tennessee Vols. They fired their coach, Jeremy Pruitt, after a pretty, average 16-19 record in 3 seasons. There was an investigation into recruiting violations. They were giving recruits money inside of Happy Meals. Very odd story. If you guys have a bored minute that you want to waste, read up about that because very, very weird story. It looks very dire, but it's really not. They hired Josh Hupo from UCF. It's a passing maestro. He had that UCF offense firing away. So at least there's some hope for the Vols here, and they have the pieces. Their quarterback competition going on right now is some real talent. Last year they had Guantanamo, who was just atrocious. But and we know that competition breeds excellence in sports. We've seen that in history. Harrison Bailey looks like the future of the program at QB. He was thrust into action last year. He played 6 games, completed 70% of his passes, threw for over almost 600 yards, four touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The weapons around him were horrible. He's got better weapons now. He's probably, if he were to win the job, I think he would do fine, but he's probably more of the future guy, and they're going to look to their other players that they brought in. They have brought in 2 transfers that should be good to go right away. And I think if they are smart, and I think Hugh Bell is, he'll go to Hendon Hooker from Virginia Tech, who transferred over. We know Hooker, he's a DFS, maestro. He's a great player. We made lots of money off him last year at Tech. Now he's thrust into a situation where as long as he wins it, he's going to put up some big stats in this offense. Threw for over 1,300 yards in 2 seasons as a full-time starter with them. Rushed for just under 1,000 yards during that same time frame. Accounted for 37 touchdowns total. And he's the best option, I think, at QB. So he's really the best. Sorry, 1 second. You need to turn that.
Change the space station so much.
All right, good. Sorry about that, guys. My daughter wouldn't be a show without my daughter interrupting.
Those
all right,
kids.
Turning the TV on full blast there. Anyways, yeah. So 37 total touchdowns. To me, he's the best option at QB for the Vols. It's very obvious. If they decide to go with Michigan transfer Joe Milton instead, that's okay. He's not as a glamorous of an option. He's much more of a safe option. But that's just going to be very. In case they have injuries, they won't be in dire straits. They've got a lot of different options. He threw for almost 1,100 yards in 6 games last year. Pretty, like I said, safe option. He only threw 4 touchdowns, though, and throw 4 interceptions. Doesn't have much of a rushing upside, and he has an atrocious completion rate of 56%. It's in the bedroom with your mom. Go ask your mom. So to me, Hooker is the play. At running back, Ty Chandler's off to UNC. You talked about him on the ACC show. Eric Gray is off to Oklahoma, which if we get a chance to do a Big 12 preview, we'll be talking about him. So the Vols are replacing their top 2 backs. That's really no easy, task. But the coaching staff still feels pretty good about their running game, and I think they'll be just fine. Jabari Small and Tyon Evans are the 2 that are really, having their names called out a lot during camp, reading on Twitter and beat writers' reports. They're looking like a good 1-2 punch. Small has the most experience. He ran for 117 yards for a YPC of 4.5, which is solid. It does sound to me like Evans is going to get the first crack at being a starter. As of right now in their depth chart, he's atop of it. JUCO transfer, he had 61 carries for 538 yards, 9 touchdowns, a YPC of 8.8, which is very healthy. Obviously, JUCO competition is not nearly what the SEC defense that he's going to see is, but anybody that can handle a 8.8 yards per carry type of total is a big time talent, I think. So I think he's good enough to contribute right away. It'll be interesting to see how their running game starts off, but it's really the passing game for me I'm going to be looking at. They're a pass-heavy attack at UCF when Hoople came over. They've got some breakout candidates at wide receiver. Like I said, last year their wide receiving crew was I don't think I ever used any of their wide receivers last year. You may have, but I really didn't target them very much. First off, Velus Jones, he's been in college for 5 years now. He's got a 6 due to the COVID extra year. He's been a returner for most of his career, but I think, he's going to end up being a very, staunch fantasy candidate here. He has 58 catches for 627 yards, 4 touchdowns in his career. Has a rushing touchdown and over 2,300 return yards. So pretty useful weapon that can be used on the ground, in the air, and the return game for Coach Hoopo's offense. Part of it, he was at USC, so he's been in, big time games. He's not going to shrivel up in the moment. And really, it sounds like he's going to be, WR1, WR2. So Jones is a guy that I've really not looked at in the years that he's been in college, but everything is different now under this offense. They also brought in Mississippi State transfer Javonte Payton, who has gotten a waiver. He's ready to go now. Payton is an absolute, he's maybe not quite a stud yet, but he has stud potential. He came over from that high-flying Mike Leach offense there at Mississippi State. Seemed to be some mesh issues. He didn't really, line up with the coaching staff, so he kind of fizzled out after a really hot 2 or 3 games to start. He does have career numbers of 28 catches, 372 yards, and a touchdown, but I think he has a really solid chance to put up over 1,000 yards receiving this year. As long as they make the right choice at quarterback. If it's Hendon Hooker, I think he's gonna put up crazy stats. If it's Milton, maybe not so much. Other receivers to really look at, Jalen Hyatt, who had 22.76 and 2 a year ago. He should thrive. JUCO transfer Anderson Povey, who had 24, 422, and 7 touchdowns. His per catch average of 17.6, so a burner. Cedric Tillman had 3 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown, and Ramel Keaton had 9 catches for 76 yards. So a pretty potent group of experienced guys mixed with Peyton coming in there. The running game is going to be a little raw at first, but they have a high flying potential at QB, and this passing attack is going to be just fine. So the Vols may be a little bit of a sneaky, guys to target on those early slates where people just assume the Vols aren't going to be very good. New coaching staff, low expectations. We may be able to get guys, like a Javante Payton at 5-6% in that first week, catch 100 yards and a touchdown, and we're off to the races. So I like the Vols. I wanted to start with them because I do think they're kind of a sneaky team, and I think they're going to put up big numbers this year. With that being said, we go from a low-end team to the cream of the crop in Alabama. Tell us about Alabama, Pete.
Well, actually, I just saw a tweet. It's funny you were talking about Tennessee, and Brian Maher actually is entering transfer portal. He was like the number 4, but he was actually competing for the job with Milton Hooker and who's the third guy? Harrison Bailey, I guess. But Maurer's gone. I guess he was disappeared for a couple of days. Nobody knew where he was. But Hooker, definitely. I mean, Hooker's been our DFS guy, right? So it's kind of exciting to see him in Tennessee, SEC, So I like Hooker. I'm a Hooker guy. All right, Bama. Bama, I mean, they could lose their whole lineup and just can rebuild, and they're still going to be good. But they do open up against my Hurricanes week 1. So they will start off 0-1 for the first time in a while, but that's how it is. Mac Jones is gone as Bama's quarterback. So the new quarterback is Bryce Young. He's a sophomore. Now Young came in. I mean, he was like the number 1 and 2 quarterback of his class. So a lot of people don't even know his name, but he wasn't number 1 quarterback of his class by accident. So he's a good quarterback. He didn't get in that many games though. I mean, he's only a sophomore, so it isn't like he sat and watched a lot. But he threw 22 passes as Mac Jones' understudy last season. But we do know he's small, but he's quick. He's fast. They say he's got a lightning quick release. He's got a strong, accurate arm. So no problem. I mean, with Bryce Young, he's a sophomore, and he's not going to be your top DFS play quarterback, but it's Bama. And I wouldn't be surprised, within 2 or 3 weeks in the season, he's going to be crushing and put up some big numbers. I'm looking, actually, I see the pricing out for week 1, and there's only like 1 or 2 SEC teams actually in the real week 1, huh? With the pricings out. One's Mississippi State, so. All right, so running back. We all know that, of course, the big guys are gone. So now it comes down to Brian Robinson. I think Robinson's going to be your new stud there at Alabama. He's finally getting to be the chance to be the guy. After playing behind Najee Harris for 2 seasons, Najee Harris is going to be tall shoes to fill. But anytime Robinson got in a game last year, he was good. He had, last year, 509 yards from scrimmage, 6 touchdowns. He's definitely going to be number 1 back. Nick Saban's been complimenting him all camp. Like I said, Najee's going to be a tough act to follow, but B-Rob's going to be quality starters. So you just can't expect Najee Harris numbers from Brian Robinson, but he's good enough for DFS purposes, where I'm assuming he's probably going to be, 7 or 8K, probably his first week. But he's a guy. Then you got a couple of guys, Trey Sanders. The thing with Trey Sanders is the backup. He got into a bad car accident last year, and he's a big favorite of Saban. He got a couple big games against Tennessee and Mississippi State where he ran for 119 yards and 19 carries, but they're bringing him back slowly. When he's back fully, he's going to be a threat, though. So remember that name, Trey Sanders, for as the season moves on a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Jay McClellan, right, Rodell Williams. But our main purpose for DFS is going to be looking at Brian Robinson for running back. Receiver. How do you replace Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle? Probably two of the best receivers in Bama history. That's a pretty damn strong history. But they were awesome. But you got John Mechie. And Mechie, he actually, I would say he had a breakout season last year. He's a junior now. He caught 55 passes. He actually ranked second on the team with 916 yards. How many touchdowns did he have? 6 touchdowns. So he was seventh. So he was seventh in the SEC in touchdowns. He was at an average of 16.7 yards per catch. Not bad. So he's going to be our main guy. He's a deep threat. He's 64% of his catches caught. He's probably the number one candidate for the Biletnikoff Award, I'm assuming. So it's going to be a nice little, and I imagine it's not going to be high owned, but a matchup, kind of pairing him and Bryce Young and some GPPs the first week we get these guys in DFS. Beside him, we got Slade Bolden, I guess I would consider. He's probably the number 2 for DFS, I'm assuming. Yeah, probably, I would assume Jay Bolden. He's going to be the guy, replacing Waddle, even though Waddle didn't give us a full season. But he's 270 yards, 24 catches. He had his first receiving touchdown actually in the championship game. It just dawned on me there. So Bolden's going to be a force to reckon with, and probably the last one's probably going to be Javon Baker, I would imagine. He's probably the third guy I would think of, as he's a sophomore. So not much for DFS at the beginning of the year, but somebody just keep it back in your mind. So main is going to be Mechie, maybe a little bit of Slade Bolden, just Mechie and Bryce Young. Anybody tight ends? I mean, not really. Miller Forrestall, he's gone. So who do we got? We got Jaleel Billingsley. So I don't think probably not much for DFS. Maybe you get him cheap, but he did. I mean, he was kind of a playmaker a little bit last year. 274 yards. He was the fifth leading receiver for Bama. So we probably going to get a little bit more out of him this year. I do know that Steve Sarkisian does like him and does look for ways to get him involved. I've been reading a lot about that. So much more than a traditional tight end. I was just reading up where he's been taking a lot of handoffs, jet sweeps, screens. He's been returning some kickoffs. So Billingsley is a favorite. So maybe Billingsley may actually be one of the sleepers of this team actually for DFS. So Bryce Young's your main guy, quarterback. Then Brian Robinson, a little bit of John Mechie, and then as a quiet sleeper, Jaleel Billingsley at tight end. That's what I got for Bama.
And just to add a little bit on the tail end there, from Ohio State, transferred over Jameson Williams, kind of a burner. I've been reading lately that Saban's expecting him to be very quickly into the featured role, potentially.
Who'd you say?
Jameson Williams. He transferred over from Ohio State. Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be next to Mechie in a featured role. There's no guarantee he'll stay there, but he's going to be getting targets right away.
Nope, nice nugget to know.
And he's a burner, so he's one of those fast guys. I think I read he had some high school St. Louis record for fastest 100 meters or something like that. Behind Ruggs, Ruggs. We know Ruggs is a fast guy when he played at Bama. So kind of exciting to hear that. See what he's priced at early. There's probably going to be a lot of hype around him, I'm sure. All right, so going from as I mentioned, cream of the crop back to a team that's going to be probably lower end. QB play, the South Carolina Gamecocks. They've moved on from their coach. 5 years of Will Muschamp was enough, I guess. He's off to be a defensive analyst for Georgia. They brought in Shane Beamer. Beamer has experience. He was with South Carolina back in like 07 to 2011-ish time frame as an assistant. He was a recruiting coordinator for them in 09, 2010, and 2011, which coincidentally they had top 25 classes in each. So big-time recruiter. Everybody's excited in around the area. He's inheriting a roster that's not very talented. Obviously, Shi Smith's gone. QB's kind of a disaster. They get our guy Kevin Harris back, who made us a lot of money. He's another guy that was low-owned all the time, and we were racking up big points with him. Starting off with QB, Ryan Helinski's gone, transferred off to Northwestern. He was not very good anyways. Colin Hill has graduated. He was 2020's leading passer. Again, not a very good guy. Luke Doty was all set to step in and take over the role from day one, but he suffered a foot injury, which sounds like it's turning into a broken foot. So he is going to be not playing / backing up. He did throw for 405 yards and 2 touchdowns in mop-up duty last year. So, he would have been a fine play. They did bring in a couple guys from St. Francis, a QB and a wide receiver tandem. So St. Francis transfer Jason Brown is in the mix. St. Francis, he threw for over 3,100 yards in 18 games, which 12 of those he started. 28 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. NEC level obviously is much lower than SEC. I realize that. But still, the kid put up good numbers when he was there. True freshman Colton Gaither is pushing for early snaps. I guess he's very impressed the coaching staff. He's learned the playbook extremely quickly. He learned it quicker than the St. Francis kid. Threw for over 6,000 yards and 61 touchdowns in high school. So, I mean, we're not going to really be targeting South Carolina QBs very often unless one of those two, Brown or Gauthier, turn into a stud early, which I really doubt. Kevin Harris, I have in my notes, I always say that dude. He is that dude. Love him. Best returning player by far. Started fall camp on the sidelines. He had a procedure on his back, so that's tough. Beamer in his pressers though, and then in his interviews all week, after practice, says he feels confident he'll be in his bell cow role by week 1. Could be coach speak. He's going to be talking about. And Harris really paid the bills last year. Low owned all the time. He ran for over 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns. He also caught 21 passes for 159 in a score. So he's just a big time player. He's probably going to be expensive. He was always like a 6'5" and 7K guy. We won't probably get him that cheap this year once he is fully healthy, ready to go. Marshawn Lloyd was set to be the starting running back last year, but he hurt his ACL early and missed the entire year, which allowed Harris to kind of step in there and claim the job as his own. This could be a situation where they're flip-flopping. Now Harris is hurt and Lloyd could step in there because Lloyd was supposed to be the starter. It's a good runner. No collegiate information on him just yet, but we'll see. If Harris is healthy, it'll be his job. Receivers, our guy Shi Smith, another low-owned guy that would pay off. People never really looked at South Carolina guys, and you and I were running Smith and Harris together quite often and making good money at it. So it's a big hole to fill in the receiving corps, obviously. So new QB, Kevin Harris banged up, Smith's gone. Where are they going to turn? Typically, you probably would look at maybe a safety valve like a tight end. So Nick Muse is the guy you want to look at here for South Carolina. He's probably the best receiving option on the team now. He was second best he had the second best receiving stats behind Shi last year. We've seen QBs in the past when they're new in the system or younger. They rely on the tight end. They throw those little short passes and kind of move the ball up and down the field and treat them like a safety valve or a baby blanket. He did catch 30 balls for 425 yards and a touchdown last year. So I think he's going to be like the number one option here as the tight end. Other guys to look at, Xavier Legette, caught 7 passes for 113. I think he'll be more of a factor. Josh Vann had 10, 88, 1. Jalen Brooks, 11 and 100. They're also bringing in Georgia Tech transfer Amarian Brown, who's kind of a weapon, 32 catches, 579 yards, 8 touchdowns in his 2 years at Georgia Tech. Dakarian Joyner had 7 catches, 55 yards. He's been used as a rushing weapon in the past. And then the St. Francis transfer that came over with the quarterback, his name's E.J. Jenkins, caught 39 passes for 800 yards and 13 touchdowns. His last season played in the NAC, which was a single season school record. So familiarity with Jason Brown is good. The three wide receivers, not running backs, that Coach Beamer's been raving about and thinks are the top 3 right now. It's Josh Vann, Jalen Brooks, and Dakarian Joyner. So surprisingly, not Brown, not Jenkins, and not Legette. Those 3 who I would have thought are not doing as well in camp. And I guess Dakarian Joyner has the early lead for WR1. So keep in mind that, because I think Joyner will come into the season probably being like a 4K receiver. He's a burner. He didn't have a lot of catches last year, but like I said, he's been used as a rushing weapon in the past. There's a lot of different ways they could use him on bubble screens. I mean, he's just that kind of guy that does things in DFS. Like a poor man's Wandel Robinson would be the best way to describe something like that. Amarian Brown's having a horrible camp. So they brought him in to be a WR1, and it's not working out. So if you're looking at some sneaky plays, South Carolina guys, Joyner, obviously Harris isn't sneaky, but Joyner could be, and then Nick Muse. I'm going to be a big proponent of using tight ends in my main lineup this year. There's a bunch I mentioned, last week in the ACC show, with the kid on Boston College, going to be a big stud, Trey Berry. Nick Muse is somebody I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be all over tight ends this year. They typically don't get a lot of ownership, but their touchdown upside, especially in some of these offenses, is just as high as the wide receivers. So those are the guys I'm on for South Carolina. Jumping back over to Pete, who's going to tell us about Mississippi State.
Interesting. You brought up Dakarian Joyner's name, and with Doty's been hurt and Joyner's active. Joyner's a quarterback too. He's actually been taking some snaps in practice. I was reading that when you were talking, so interesting. All right, who talking about?
He's like a Cordell Stewart or something from back in the day.
So yeah, that could be. We could be talking about that call week 2 or week 1 but you talking about Joyner. He's probably right. He's probably gonna come across like 4,500, and he's gonna next thing you know he's gonna 120 yards and 2 touchdowns week 1 or something. So that's something we may be talking about. So nice call there. We got Arkansas.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It's supposed to be Mississippi State, but if you got Arkansas in front of you, can go there.
Wow, yeah, I'm Mississippi. I'm sorry, Mississippi State. I got 2 teams up here. So Mississippi State, it's been talked about all camp, the quarterback controversy. Will Rogers or Jack Abraham. I don't think there's much of a controversy. I think it's Will Rogers. There's actually one point I saw Abraham was missing from camp. Another one was missing. But from everything I'm seeing, it's Will Rogers. Mike Leach is saying that he's not going to be playing 2 quarterbacks. So whoever wins the competition, but you think it's going to be Rogers. And we all know most season 2s under Mike Leach are huge upgrades from season 1s. So expect a lot of running gun from Mississippi State. I definitely wouldn't expect a regression. I would expect a progression from this team. What Leach, we all know about Mike Leach and Air Leach and all that. So, and it's going to start. I mean, and I think Will Rogers is fine. I mean, he's done enough, right? I mean, he done enough last year where I think he's a decent quarterback. Let's see, Rogers is a sophomore, right? So yeah, I mean, the thing is, the only problem is Leach hasn't announced it yet. But he started last year on the bench, I know, and then I think it was like week 5 or 6, and he kind of went in took over for KJ Costello, and then he rest his history. I remember winning some money with him in the middle of that season, and it seemed like that air raid offense clicked with Rogers right away. He completed 70% of his passes, close to 2,000 yards. He threw 11 TDs and only 7 interceptions, where Costello threw 7 scores and 11 picks during his time as a starter. So, but there's a lot more on his plate though this year. So it should be Rogers' team now. But one thing about Mike Leach is capable of molding quarterbacks to be successful in his system. And I think Will Rogers is the type of guy where he's going to be very profitable for us in DFS and profitable for that program once he is inserted there and we know he's the quarterback. And then we run to the receiver, and it's Jaden Walley. I think Jaden Walley is number 1. He should be great. We know he's number 1. He was the clear offensive weapon last year, all SEC freshman. He broke actually a 43-year-old Mississippi State record for receiving yards in season by a freshman. Finished year 718 yards, 2 touchdowns, which is 200 more yards than the next closest pass catcher, averaging 13 yards per catch. So we know Wally's the man. I think the big problem we're going to see is who's 2 and 4. We're probably going to get Austin Williams in the slot, I'm assuming. But then after that, I mean, it's all going to come out in camp. I mean, you got Makai Polk, Jameer Calvin, some names to remember. But to me, it's all about Jaden Walley. And then our running back is Jacobius Marks. Actually, we used Marks quite a bit last year. Marks and Dylan Johnson were both named for candidates for the Doak Walker Award. And I think they're the only team in the SEC besides Georgia had 2 running backs nominated for the award. So that's the beauty of the Leach air raid offense is that it's a scheme that's going to allow both Marks and Johnson to showcase their versatility, which is going to make them much more of an asset to the NFL. They're showing that they can gain yards, they can catch and run, gain yards on the ground and catch patches out of the backfield. So I think there's enough for both of them. I think for DFS is probably Marks is probably the main guy we want to look for the first week. I mean, he led Mississippi State last year in rushing yards and receptions, 325 rushing yards, 60 receptions for 268. But Johnson's right behind him. He had 225 rushing yards last year, 4 TDs, 36 receptions for 157 yards. He had 2 rushing scores in that game against Georgia. So actually, he was the first state freshman since 2013 to score multiple touchdowns on the ground in a single game. So Marks is probably my main guy for DFS. but Dylan Johnson's right there behind him. So we like Mississippi State for DFS. We all know about Mike Leach. We all know the history there. I do think Will Rogers is going to make that a big step this year. He's going to become, I think, a good quarterback for DFS. And Jaden Wally is pretty much going to be a guy we're going to want to use every week. He's going to be one of those 8-9K receivers that is always in play, especially, and he's the go-to guy. There really isn't much competition behind him beside Austin Williams. So that's Mississippi State, Mike Leach, air raid offense in a nutshell.
Yeah, man. I think a lot of people are going to be, it's already, you saw in the chat earlier, people hyping up Keyshawn Butte for LSU because he's going to be, the high-priced next LSU guy that's putting up major points. And I don't think it's fair to overlook, call him the best when Jaden Wally may put up similar, if not better numbers. So we may end up seeing that where Wally to us is a clear-cut WR1, but he may just end up drawing lower ownership. And, me with leverage, I may end up rostering him more than Butte, even though Butte's a stud, or both of them, because, if the industry is going to overlook a guy like Wally in that offense, I'll take him at 20% ownership over Butte at 50 every time. It might not be the right call every week, but we're going to win some money on that type of stuff. So ownership and whatnot.
Agreed.
So I love Wally, definitely. All right, next team here, Kentucky Wildcats. It just came out today, 6 players being investigated for some sort of first-degree burglary charge. Nobody of note, really. There's a running back, Jutane McClain, and wide receiver Ernest Sanders being the most notable, but they're not expected to be big-time players. They are expected to drop it. Not a lot of, evidence and stuff, but that's hanging over the program right now. So, stuff like that can really turn into something nasty. At quarterback, it's going to look different for Kentucky. They're going to be without their 3-yard starter, Terry Wilson. He's off to New Mexico. No big loss there. We don't really use Wilson anyways. Former Auburn transfer Joey Gatewood, who I thought was going to be a lot better in this program. I thought he might turn into a Lynn Bowden type. Didn't work out. He's now off to UCF, or heavily implied. There's rumors all over Twitter today that he's off to UCF. I don't know what he's going to do there. Dylan Gabriel's in front of him. I don't know what Gatewood's doing. He's just going from school to school to try to get a starting job, and he's not going to beat anybody out. So whatever, he's off to UCF. So the top 2 guys from last year are gone for Kentucky. Now we're looking at Penn State transfer Will Levis, probably going to take the job. And then they've got Bo Allen, second-year player Bo Allen is in the mix. He only had 7 pass attempts as a true freshman last year. Wouldn't expect him to get the job. I think it's going to be Will Levis. As a backup for Penn State, he did throw for 644 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 470 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's in 2 years as a backup. Those rushing yards were eye-opening. I didn't realize he had been doing that sort of damage on the ground as a primary backup. Now, he is the hand-picked transfer target when they got a new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen. He's hand-picked by the new coach to be his offensive coordinator, and then he will turn around and let him say, okay, you want a quarterback, because they figured all these guys were going to leave. You go out to the transfer market and find one. And he went out and picked Will Levis. So they've got some sort of relationship. He likes him. That's his guy. And I think that he's going to end up being the QB1 there. So, and the rushing numbers are really eye-opening. You don't expect a backup to really put up those kind of numbers, 470 and 6, without anybody noticing. So I'm interested to see how he'll do. The Wildcats want to have a more balanced attack. They didn't pass a lot last year. They ran a lot. But I think at the end of the day, they need to rely on their strength. And their strength is going to be the rushing game. They have Chris Rodriguez back. He had the 5th most rushing yards per game in the SEC a year ago. Kind of an underrated guy. He rushed for 785 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's going to be backed up by change of pace back to Wase Smoke. Smoke's dealt with a ton of injuries. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to get a lot of work. He has rushed for 900 yards and 9 touchdowns in about 2.5 seasons. So he's definitely a semi-stud for DFS purposes. Asim Rose is gone. His 650 yards plus rushing are all the way gone. So that's going to be a lot of carries for Smoke to kind of jump in there, because I don't think Rodriguez will take a full bell cow back type of role, but maybe 70-30, 60-40, something like that. But those guys are definitely going to be in play. As far as wide receiver goes, they do have some weapons at wide receiver, though, to be able to start to throw the ball more. So I think Levi's could be a sneaky QB. They do have Josh Ali back. He's electing to use his extra year of eligibility. He wants to improve his draft stock. He sees what Kentucky's coaching staff is doing. He did catch 54 balls for 473 yards and a touchdown last year. Or I'm sorry, that's Wandell's number. Or no, that was his. So they're feeling like Ollie's going to be able to put up, 800 plus yards, some touchdowns, kind of work his way into like a WR1 role and get on draft boards. And then they brought in Nebraska transfer and DFS, savant Wandel Robinson. Now, Wandel didn't have a great year last year, but the year prior he did. And we know he's going to be running the ball. He's going to be catching the ball. They're going to use him in that, that multifaceted role, which we love to target. He did have 461 receiving yards last year, 240 rushing, and then 2 total touchdowns. So I think he could be putting up some big numbers in this revamped offense. And now that they have an actual QB who can throw the ball, he'll do some damage. Tight end wise, Justin Rigg, 12 catches for 145 and 1, and Keaton Upshaw, 16 catches for 198 and 3. This type of offense that they want to run factors in the tight ends heavily. So Rigg and Upshaw are 2 guys that, maybe they come in, maybe not week 1 we're using them, but, 2 or 3 weeks down the road, they're 3.5, 4K. We're seeing the tight ends in use. Those are the type of guys you can make money on, get some touchdown upside, especially if one of those guys separates themselves in the red zone. But yeah, Ollie and Wandel are going to be a really dynamic duo for DFS purposes, and I bet they're going to go overlooked because when people think of Kentucky, they think of a running team, poor quarterback play. Lynn Bowden, usually the QB's a dual threat guy, which it looks like Levi's has that ability, but they're going to be able to throw the ball this year. And I think it's going to be more of an exciting offense than we're accustomed to seeing from Kentucky. So don't sleep on them for DFS purposes whatsoever. That's it for Kentucky. Now we're on to Arkansas. Let's hear about some Arkansas guys.
Now Arkansas, I'm kind of excited about Arkansas. To me, they're going to be one of the, exciting teams mainly because I like KJ Jefferson. I guess first this offensive line is coming. This offensive line, it all ties in with KJ Jefferson and Traylon Smith, these guys. But this offensive line, Sam Pittman is actually is a former offensive line coach by trade, but they're returning all 5 guys, or they're returning, I think, 5 starters. Yeah, all 5 starters are expected back, which is going to first help Traylon Smith. So I guess we'll talk about running backs first. It's going to help Traylon Smith a lot. Last year, Smith had a good year. He ran for 710 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry. And I was just reading it somewhere else, and it's true. He needs to be part of a rotation. Smith is small. He's 5'9", 190. He's going to get beat up. So one name, and I know Dominic Johnson is a name popping up, but Raheem Sanders, from everything I'm seeing, I'm reading a lot of quotes and comments from beats that they love Raheem Sanders. He's a big bruising freshman. And I think by the end of the season, by December, we're going to be talking about Raheem Sanders. They call him the Rocket a lot. So Smith is still your guy there. And I think the big thing about Smith is he's been quiet all season. Everybody's, they know Smith has got the job. Everybody's wondering who's going to be the number 2 guy. But Smith's come out strong. He's a capable running back. A couple of years at Arizona State, I believe it was. He didn't get used that much. Then he transferred to Arkansas, played behind Raheem Boyd last year at the start of the season. But Boyd had a lot of injuries last year, battled injuries all year. Slowly, Smith began to shine. Before you know, he went from backup to a platoon role with Boyd. Next thing you know, Boyd opted out those last 3 or 4 weeks, and next thing you know, it was Smith's job. So he finished with team high 710 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and scored 6 touchdowns. So Smith's the running back, but keeping it back of your mind, Raheem Sanders, freshman. By the end of the season, he's probably going to be making some noise. The quarterback is KJ Jefferson. I like KJ Jefferson a lot. This whole season here is about KJ Jefferson. He's 6'3", 240. They say he's got big time upside with his arm, and he can run. So the question is, he had a really good game last year against Missouri. Was that a mirage, or a one-off, or was that the real KJ Jefferson we're going to see? But I think he's going to be okay. Anybody under Kendall Briles, we know this guy's going to probably throw 30 times. He's probably going to run the ball 10 times. How many quarterbacks in the SEC are going to get that kind of volume? So KJ Jefferson is probably not going to be that expensive the first week on DFS. I haven't seen any prices yet. I don't think they're out on Arkansas. But Jefferson is going to be a definite sleeper. The only problem with Jefferson, though, is as you were talking, I was looking on Twitter. He's been getting beat up on Twitter. There's a couple of pictures popped up. He's like 12 pounds overweight. So obviously he needs to drop a few pounds. But we know any quarterback in the Kendall Brown system kicks ass. So KJ Jefferson is definitely a name to keep it in the back of your mind or keep it in front of your mind at the beginning of the season for DFS. Who else we got? Any receivers? Treylon Burks. Love him. I think Burks is a great receiver. We're talking about Jaden Wally. Well, Burks is right there with the Wally. He's a junior. He's a big impact player on this offense. 20 yards last year, 7 touchdowns, 51 receptions. And by the end of the season, him and Mike Wood had a really good chemistry. There was a really solid tandem, and now Mike Wood has gone to Oklahoma. So now the problem with Burks is going to be he's going to be the number one. Everybody's going to be centering. Everybody's going to be paying attention, focusing on Burks. But I still think he can get the job done. Who are we looking at beside Burks? Probably like Trey Knox, Devion Warren, maybe. Get tight end Hudson Henry. But it's pretty much DFS purposes. We're looking at Treylon Burks, and that's it. So Arkansas, exciting team, a fun team to watch. KJ Jefferson, Treylon Smith, and Treylon Burks.
All right, moving on to the Texas A&M Aggies, coming off a strong 9-1 season. Argument to be made, they should have been in the college football playoff. They did go to the Orange Bowl instead, where they dusted North Carolina, finished 4th in the final rankings. Everyone's back, obviously, except their leader at QB, Kellen Mond. And Kellen Mond was a guy who I could never help myself because he was always low on 2. In some weeks, he really paid off, but didn't quite have the season I was really hoping for. Now he's off to the NFL. I believe he's with Minnesota. So having to replace the QB, but the firepower at running back and wide receiver is massive. So whoever does win the QB job between Haynes King and Zach Calzada is going to be inheriting a very nice situation. Right now, it appears Haynes King is the name we want to know. He's the favorite. Solid 6'3", 200-pound guy, that prototypical quarterback frame, and that should be able to handle that rigorous war zone known as the SEC. He did play in mop-up duty a couple times last season, only threw 4 passes, completed 2 of them, 59 yards and a touchdown. So he's got a cannon a little bit, threw one interception, also rushed for 43 yards, 7.2 YPC. So, maybe there's some dual threat optimism there if he gets this job. Calzada played a little in 2019, didn't play at all last year, threw 133 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception. So a little experience for him. But like I said, Haynes King really appears to be the guy that's going to be the front runner to win that job. Now, like I said, he comes into a great situation at running back, all SEC RB, and yet another. It seems like we had a lot of guys in the SEC people just overlooked. Isaiah Spiller. Why I called him YFC favorite here in my preview, back to make us some money. When I think of Isaiah Spiller, I think back to that like midweek. Remember, everybody was on Ania Smith because of his receiving, upside, which is great. But Spiller was like 4.7, and I kept messaging you like, I don't get why no one's on Spiller. He's a high volume RB. He's priced like a scrub. Like, what am I missing here? And you're like, you're right. And we played him, and he rushed for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Smith did pretty well too because he gets the catches. But I mean, you get a guy like Spiller at 4.7. I mean, I don't understand what I was missing, and he was only 4%. I think that was just the beauty of groupthink, and that happens a lot in college football where everyone gets on the same plays and they start overlooking good plays. Because it just didn't make sense for Spiller to be that. I mean, he's coming off an injury. He had a couple bad games, but it just really didn't make sense for him to be that price. So that's an example of how you can really take advantage of some of these really good players that are mispriced or the industry is overlooking. So I always think of Spiller, or whenever I think of Spiller, I think of that moment. He rushed for over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, YPC very healthy, 5.5. He also caught 20 passes for just under 200 yards. He has 49 receptions in his career, so he can catch balls too. But he's probably not going to be a prime, a lot of catching for him because of the other weapons on the team. But I think he's going to get a lot of touches. It's not going to be a bell cow. If he gets 60 to 70% of the touches there out of the backfield, and he's priced under 7K, he's definitely going to be a play. The emergence of Devin Akane, I think that's how you say that, during the Orange Bowl, he earned MVP honors during that. Devin rushed for in 2023 364 yards on 43 carries. That's a YPC of 8.5. Probably not sustainable, but that's a lot for 43 carries. And 4 touchdowns. He caught 5 for 97 and a touchdown. And ended the season on a high note. The last regular season game against Auburn, he rushed for 99 yards. And then he followed that up for in the Orange Bowl win over North Carolina, 12 carries, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So obviously they're going to be stupid potent in the running game with Kane and Spiller. And then you have Ania Smith, who's really moving over to receiver. Last year he was moving to receiver mostly, but he'll still get a few carries here or there, but he's really going to be a mostly a receiver. You see he had 564 receiving yards last year, 293 rushing yards, 10 total touchdowns. So Ania Smith is going to be a stud. They've got one of the best tight ends in the game, Jalen Wydermyer, who really doesn't get talked about enough. 46, 506, and 6. He had 6 touchdowns in his freshman year, 6 touchdowns again last year. I think he may push closer to 1,000 yards at that tight end spot this year because he's just a real lethal weapon. Caleb Chapman, who's back to full health now. Chapman looked like he was going to be this sneaky stud too. The first 2 games of the season last year, he had 14, 197, and 3, and everybody's like, whoa, who's this kid? And then he got hurt. I believe it was week 3 or week 4. So he was looking like a big-time playmaker. He's back. They've also got a couple of guys like Chase Lane, who caught 29 for 409 and 2 touchdowns. Ezekiel Jones, 18 catches for 178 yards. Jalen Preston, 7 catches for 74 yards. So they're healthy at the position. They've got depth to protect against injuries. And then they've got, high-end guys like Smith, Wydermyer, and Chapman, and then Spiller and the Kane at the running back spot. So there's a lot of weapons here to the point where the kid Haynes King may end up coming in as a no-name that nobody knows, priced at that 6.5 or 7K, and somebody that we might be able to take a shot on depending on how the schedule lines up for the first slate that they appear on. So I like this Aggies team. I don't know that they'll be 9-1, but it wouldn't shock me to see them at a top 5, top 10 team at the end of the season with all of these weapons. The SEC is truly the best conference in football. It's really not even close. Every team, even the South Carolinas and the Tennessees of the world, have mega weapons that would dominate most other conferences, Texas A&M being one of those. So definitely going to be a lot of fantasy goodness for the Aggies. That moves us on to the Gators. Florida Gators, they lost a lot too. What are we doing with the Gators? I know the QB that's coming in is getting a lot of love, but what do we like here?
Yeah, very interesting, right? Because behind, Kyle Trask, they're probably the most prolific passing attack in the nation. And he's gone. And the thing is, his weapons are gone too. So, all the big guys are gone. First round talent guys like Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney. And now we got guys like Jacob Copeland, Trent Whittemore, Xavier Henderson. They don't compare to Pitts and Toney, but once again, it's Florida, as Dan Mullen, and we know what Mullen can do. So, and this is, first of all, the quarterback is Emory Jones. Emory Jones is a junior. He came out of Georgia in that recruiting class. All those big Georgia quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, all those guys out of Georgia, and he went to Florida. He bided his time. He's a backup for 3 years, so you can't say he's not familiar with the program. And this is kind of his coming out show. And it took him 3 years. Occasionally they called him for certain packages and blowouts, but he's big play, the big play threat we can do with his legs. And the thing is, we know what Dan Mullen will scheme his offense. Nobody is better than Dan Mullen. He's brilliant at tailoring his quarterback to his skill set. And we know Emory Jones is a runner. Is there questions about his passing? Yeah. There's rumors, all spring that Anthony Richardson was going to take the job because he's a better passer. That's not going to happen. This team is going to run. They're going to run, and they're going to run more. We saw what happened those last 2 years with Dak Prescott, Nick Fitzgerald, all those guys. And this is what we're going to see with Emory Jones. A lot of, if you're not a college football head like we are, a lot of people are not even know who Jones is, but they're going to know right away after the first couple weeks. So, who else we got? Jones is your main play. there that we're going to be looking at for DFS purposes. You got Damon Pierce, who's a senior running back. Their running attack was not great last year. They just averaged 131.2 yards per game, 4.3 yards per carry. Pierce was the leader. He started 10 games. He had 503 yards, 4 touchdowns. The thing is, when you got mobile quarterbacks like Emory Jones taking snaps, Jones is going to get a lot of the fanfare and a lot of the yardage, the DFS points. So it's going to be tough to see where most of these guys land for DFS purposes. I can't even. Maybe probably the top receiver we want to look at for DFS is maybe Justin Shorter. He's probably the one guy I'd maybe lean toward. He just hasn't had that breakout yet. You got Jacob Copeland, who was a real fast kid. I think he's actually the leading receiver returning. I say Xavier Henderson, but you're not going to replace these guys like Pitts. So we got to play a couple of games. We're not going to play all these guys the first week anyways, but definitely Emory Jones. I'm really curious to see what Emory Jones' price is going to be his first week. So that's what we got for Florida. We got Emory Jones and maybe a little bit of Damon Pierce, but probably not week 1. Emory Jones. Emory Jones, my man. Yeah,
I agree. So that's going to be weird because we are going to go from semi-stacking Florida all the time to probably not using them really at all. Because Pitts was that automatic pay for and get your 20 points or more, and they just don't have that now. So, but yeah, I love the Emory Jones call. All right, Auburn Tigers. They've moved on from the once promising Gus Malzahn. There's a lot of new coaches in the SEC this year, by the way. A lot of these lower end teams, they can their coaches, so that playing to things teams could come and stumble out the gates a little bit as they learn new philosophies. They were a team that looked good under him. I mean, they were fighting for titles, and then that last season they averaged less than 400 yards and 25 points. It was brutal. Auburn offense was brutal last year, and there was no reason for it to be brutal. They had Eli Stove, they had Seth Williams, had Anthony Shorts. I mean, those are 3 weapons that most teams would love to have, and they just didn't use them right. And I might have to admit, my guy Bo Nix maybe not as good as I want him to be. They do have a new coach, Brian Harsing, former head coach of Boise State. We know what he's all about. Overall record of 76-24. The guy's a winner, so there's going to be high expectations for him to turn this thing around for Auburn very quickly. Not just me, though. I think all of us at YFC have kind of been Bo Nix truthers. Want to see him do well. Just might have to admit that he's not an SEC level caliber starter. Like if he would have went to the MAC or maybe like a Big 12 school, like I think Nix would be like a semi-stud. But the SEC is a different animal, man. He's completed less than 60% of his passes in his 2 years as starter, which is bad. He has thrown for almost 5,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So a good touchdown interception ratio, but he just throws a lot of uncatchable balls is the problem. He would throw like 15 targets a game at times to Seth Williams because we know about his high target rate, but like half of those would not even be catchable balls. So very, very much so hoping he got on his accuracy this offseason here and got better because they really need him to do well, obviously. He's shown a little bit of dual threat upside, scored 14 rushing touchdowns in his career, but I just don't think he can be comfortable out the gates. And if he has any mistakes, they may yank him because Auburn did bring in another intra-conference transfer. We're seeing him all over the place, but LSU transfer Tj Finley. He's over there in Auburn now. QB's got a big arm. He's got a lot of talent. His long season at LSU, it was okay. Threw for 941 and 5 touchdowns in 5 games. And that was as a true freshman. You throw a true freshman into the SEC, battlefield, comes out with 5 touchdowns and 941 yards in 5 games. That's probably pretty decent. So it'll be interesting to see what he looks like here coming into camp, or coming out of camp, I should say. I feel like he may have a chance to beat Nix out. So we'll have to see how that goes between those two, Nix or Finley. I don't know that I'll be comfortable using one of them out of the gate, but I'm definitely going to be watching to see how that shakes out. The team would probably be pretty wise to rely on their running game. We know they've got our guy Tank Bigsby back from the sophomore season. He rushed for 834 and 5 touchdowns. YPC is 6. Bigsby kind of came out of nowhere in the middle of the season. Auburn's running back, they would say they're going to run Shivers and then run Williams. They'd say they're going to run Williams and then go Bigsby. But at the end of the year, it became Bigsby's team, and I feel pretty confident using him this year. He contributed 11 receptions for 84 yards, so he has catching ability if he needs to. DJ Williams is off to FSU. So Scat Back, Sean Shivers, and Tank Bigsby are going to be the main two guys that share carries. Probably be maybe like that 70-30 from Bigsby or maybe even 80-20. Shivers is really just kind of a change of pace back. He rushed for 276 and a touchdown last year. He caught 10 balls for 55 yards. He's just okay. Shivers clearly is just kind of like one of those guys to give your tank, your literal tank, and Tank Bigsby a water break once in a while. So I like Bigsby. I think that they're going to be seeing a heavy dose of him this year, and he should easily eclipse 1,000 yards. Wide receiver, like we mentioned, you're trying to replace Seth Williams, Eli Stove, Anthony Schwartz. That's really not easy to do. Those three guys collectively combined for 1,700 yards last year. Pretty much all your receiving yards. I think the rest of the team had like 80. So that's a lot. You're going to see a completely revamped wide receiver game here. The most of the hype for WR1 right now is Elijah Canyon. A lot of talk of him ascending into this, Seth Williams-like role. So I'm going to be curious to see what Canyon's all about here out of camp. It's probably going to be cheap early on, so I might want to get some GPP exposure to him, kind of one of those sneakier plays. So Elijah Canyon is a guy that's kind of on my watch list right now. They're also being helped by Georgia transfer Demetrius Robertson, former 5-star recruit. He started off in California for a couple seasons, came over to Georgia. He's been bouncing back around. He was a former 5-star coming out. He just hasn't lived up to expectations. But he gets granted that extra year of eligibility because of the COVID year. So this is technically his 6th year. In his career, he's got 99 catches, almost 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's also rushed for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you see he's got some upside there in the ground. But there's going to be a lot of targets coming Demetrius Robertson's way. If they can figure out their QB play in Auburn, Robertson's probably coming to the best situation he possibly can, knowing that Canyon's really the only guy that's going to challenge him for touches and targets because this receiving part's very depleted. So Robertson, we'll have to watch his price. I have a feeling he's going to come into it way overpriced to where we can't use him, but hopefully not, because I am very interested in him. But like I said, Elijah Canyon is really the guy for Auburn that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. So definitely a different Auburn team to the point where we're not going to be using their wide receivers very often, at least early. It's going to be Tank Bigsby and kind of a wait and see with everybody else. All right, so that wraps up Auburn. Now we will move over to Vanderbilt. We've got a couple of bottom feeders, but we've got a couple good teams wedged in here too. But Vanderbilt, Pete, tell me about Vanderbilt. So I think there's going to be some DFS options here.
Yeah, I think the big question at Vanderbilt is going to be is how many carries is Ramon Davis going to take? He's going to be with Marlowe transferred out. So we got. Oh my God! Ramon Davis. Wow, I blank his name. So Ramon Davis just came in from Temple, but yeah, from Temple. He's 5'9". He's like 220 pounds, but as a freshman, he ran to close to 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He also looked good receiving the ball. So averaging almost 5 yards per carry. He had over 100 yards 3 times. He's a really good running back. I think he's going to be their whole rushing attack for Vanderbilt. And we don't know how, with this new offensive coordinator at Vanderbilt, he's been at Iowa, Texas Tech, ASU, so he's been all over the place. I'm not sure how he's going to lean on with a running back, but I really think that they're going to lean on Ramon Davis a lot for this team. So he's going to be, before it's all said and done, he's a junior, a big time DFS threat, and I bet you he's not going to come very expensive either the first week or two that Vanderbilt plays. And then, this is not a great DFS team, but, you got Kenny Seals. The kid's a sophomore. He didn't do bad last year. He actually was pretty solid. He was the 3rd true freshman actually to start a season opener for an SEC team when he played against Texas A&M. And I think he's done good because that offensive line last year was really bad. The offensive line was decimated. They had with opt-outs, a lot of injuries, and he completed 65% of his passes. Averages 6.7 yards per attempt through 12 touchdowns against 10 interceptions. His yards per attempt could definitely improve, but remember, like we said, he had a bad offensive line in front of him. They were not giving him much time at all to throw. He was, doing scrambling. He was on his ass a lot. So I would definitely going to see an improvement. How much is he going to improve? We don't know, but he's probably going to be better than last year. So, I mean, is he DFS viable? Probably not the first week or two. But to me, on this, for DFS, it's all about Ramon Davis. We do have a good receiver here, which I used quite a bit last year, in Cam Johnson. I like Cam Johnson a lot. He's going to be definitely their number one. Is he DFS viable week one? With a guy like Seals, with Kenny Seals. I'm not sure, but we can definitely put him down. I mean, he's a big play guy. Last year, he had 556 catches for 545 yards, 3 touchdowns. As a freshman, he had 30 grabs, 3 touchdowns. So he's a quick guy. He's the main man though there now. So I guess Cam Johnson is DFS viable. Maybe a little bit of Chris Pierce, Amir Abdul-Rahman, possibly. He's a senior. But to me, it's all about Ramon Davis and then kind of a sub Ken Seals and Cam Johnson for DFS for Vanderbilt. Not much to talk about here.
Yeah, I loved Ramon Davis. I think not last year, but the year before. They were in that condensed schedule last year. Yeah, as a freshman, he was a really sneaky DFS play because they had another guy at running back. His name escapes me now because we talk about so many sports, so many names. But everybody was expecting him to do well, and Davis was a cheap play, and they fit my lineup, and I lucked out because it was a game where it was a breaking out party. So I'm excited to see how he does here. Coming out of Temple, he was probably way too good for that conference, and now he's going to Vanderbilt.
1,000 yards freshman year.
Yeah, he'll get the rock a lot. Hopefully that line can hold for him because he went from a semi okay conference to the toughest. So it'll be interesting to see how he is because I always thought he was way too talented for Temple. All right, so next team here is a fun team, Ole Miss. Figured if I gave you Bama and a couple of those others that I'd give myself Ole Miss because this is gonna be a fun team to stack up. Hotty toddy, as our KVO friend Wes likes to say. One of, if not the best team for CFB DFS purposes. They typically play a Matador defense, so stacking against them is a winning play. But then they have a high-powered offense on the ground and through the air, so stacking for them is a winning play. Game stacks involving Ole Miss games were so auto last year. You would almost guarantee yourself a min cash just from stacking both sides. Obviously, you got to play 1 or 2 players from another that have a legal lineup. But if you played like 80% of your lineup from an Ole Miss game, you were guaranteed a profit. You wouldn't always bank, but you would be pretty damn close. I love this team yet again. They were involved in a ton of shootouts. They were 3rd in the nation in total yards, 556 per game, which is sick. They were giving up at like 500 plus a game too. They scored 39 points per game. Really no reason to think there's going to be any regression either. I think they could push that even further this season. Biggest difference coming into this season as opposed to last year, there's really no question marks about QB. Matt Corral, John Rice Plumlee, they were kind of duking it out a little bit before Matt took it over. He's coming into, it's his job. He grabbed the bull by the horns and he's putting up the video game numbers this year, definitely. Not to say that Rice Plumlee won't be involved though, especially with him moving to wide receiver, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. They also have a youngster, Kincaid Dent, who everyone's raving about, has a freaking cannon for an arm. Keep that name filed away for later in the year or two. He's going to be a guy that we're using in DFS a lot. Anyways, Portal threw for over 3,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. When you sling it like that, you're bound to throw some interception, but still a good TD to INT ratio. He also rushed for 506 yards and 4 scores. He really showed himself as a dual threat. Everybody feels Plumlee as the guy as the dual threat, but Portal held his own. And I never thought I'd be willing to pay upwards of 10K, but towards the end of the season, we were doing it, paying almost 10K for him. And I have a feeling he's going to come into 2021 extremely expensive, and he may warrant that price. Anything over 9K, you may have to strongly consider it because they're going to be slinging the ball. At running back, they're strong there too. They're not a one-trick pony type of team. Jerrion, Ely, and Snoop Connor, they are that 1-2 punch. Ely's typically the guy for your cash games, while Connor is typically that GPP guy when he's priced at like 4.5, 4.7. Looking at their stats, Ely had a YPC, yard per carry. You guys don't know, 5.1, 745 yards and 9 touchdowns. Snoop held his own, 8 touchdowns of his own, 421 yards on the ground with a 4.5 YPC. So both guys definitely valuable for DFS purposes back in this lineup again. And then they're losing, you know, at wide receiver, the god of DFS, Elijah Moore. You know, any team that would lose an option like Elijah Moore, who's a 1,000-yard receiver, puts up 50 fantasy points a week, it seemed like, you'd be like, oh, they're going to be some major regression. They're going to stink. But I don't know that we're going to notice all that much. Obviously, losing Moore is a big deal, but they've got the weapons to just keep rolling along here. They're also losing their hyper-productive tight end, albeit inconsistent, Kenny Yeboah. But they're not going to be lacking options. And this is quickly, to me, it's becoming like WRU. You know, I know a lot of other schools try to claim that, but my guy DK Metcalf came out of here, AJ Brown, now Elijah Moore. You know, we've got some other guys that, you know, Jonathan Mingo, Dontario's Drummond, Braylon Sanders. Now John Rice Plumlee's going to take some snaps at wide receiver. They're just going to be a really fun team. And I think each week it's going to be they're going to be expensive, so it's going to be really taking whichever of those wide receivers is the cheapest. And that's kind of how you and I played it last year. It ended up being Braylon Sanders a lot was the cheapest. Everybody would chase those big Drummond or Mingo games, whereas Sanders was just that consistent guy that was putting up 15 to 20 fantasy points, where Drummond would go 30, 40, but 5. So we would just go with Sanders. So I still like Sanders a lot. He had 376 yards, 4 touchdowns. Drummond had 417 and 7. Mingo 379 and 3. Expect those numbers to be, you know, way bigger this year. Obviously, Elijah Moore had a lot of the stats because he took all of the usage and targets, but they're going to be more spread out this year. And then, like I said, Plumlee, there's talk of him jumping right into the WR3 spot ahead of one of these Sanders, Mingo, Drummond. Drummond is locked in, it sounds like, but Mingo, Sanders, and Plumlee are battling for those WR2 and WR3 spots. Plumlee did catch 6 passes for 79 yards a season ago. We know he can run. He rushed for 263 and 2. So Plumlee, if DK gives him to us as a wide receiver and categorizes him that instead of a QB, I think I'm going to probably play him a lot more than I don't, just because there's opportunity for him to throw passes, run the ball, catch the ball, maybe even return. So getting a weapon like that into your lineup, if he's categorized as a wide receiver and I don't have to burn a QB spot on him, he's definitely going to be a strong play. So Ole Miss is like I said, their defense is supposedly improved. We'll believe it when we see it. Expect 40, 50, 60 point, you know, shootouts between Ole Miss and their opponents all season long. There's going to be really no difference. Losing Elijah Moore hurts, but when you have weapons like this and an offense like this and a coach like Lane Kiffin, you can expect a lot of points to be put on the board. So very excited for this team. They're going to be one of, if not the best DFS squad yet again. All right, we have 3 teams left: Georgia, LSU, and Missouri. Let's have Pete talk about Georgia next.
Georgia. I'm looking at Missouri. I'm saying, okay. So Georgia is one of the top teams in the SEC. So to me, the main question on this team is going to be Jermaine Burton and who is going to be started opposite him. Cyrus Jackson or Eric Gilbert, the transfer from LSU. But we do know that this offense should definitely step forward. Year 200 Todd Monken, definitely. They should be definitely throwing more this year now that we have a capable quarterback. But first, with Jermaine Burton, this kid's definitely capable of 50 catches, 100,000 yards easy. He's a stud. I don't have to sit here and tell you all of his numbers, but he's the man. He's a top. I said just everything about him. JT Daniels obviously likes him. Burton's going to be open as a sophomore. He had 404 yards. He knows the system better than Gilbert and Jackson. He's going to be the man, especially at the beginning of the season. So who's our number 2? Me personally, I'd probably lean Eric Gilbert. He's probably, when it's all said and done, Gilbert is probably the most talented of all those guys. That's including George Pickens. Pickens done. But this kid's 6'5", he's 248. He's gonna line up wide. He's gonna be more of a pass catcher than a tight end, I'm assuming, under Todd Monken. They did at LSU. Remember, we all talked with him last year. He's a 5-star recruit out of Marietta High School. Everybody in Georgia knows him. He had 2 touchdowns for LSU last year. I really think that he doesn't know the system yet, so that's why we're all leaning on Burton have a huge year. But Gilbert, I think, has too much talent not to be starting. And as the season goes on, his snaps are going to increase. So by December, we're going to be talking about Eric Gilbert in the same breath as probably Jermaine Burton. The other receiver he got is Cyrus Jackson. I mean, at the end of the season last year, he kind of emerged. So he had a career game against Auburn. He had finished 149 yards. That was a big game for him. He's going to be starting from the slot, I believe. He'll be in the slot as Gilbert should be lining out wide. As long as he's healthy. I mean, he's recovered from a knee injury, but he did show a lot of chemistry with Stetson Bennett last year. But curious to see how him and JT Daniels going to line up. That's where I kind of have him third. So for DFS purposes, we love Jermaine Burton. As the season goes on, we love Eric Gilbert, and then we got Cyrus Jackson's kind of a wild card. I'm just kind of curious where he's going to end up. Running back, one of your favorites. I remember what wasn't Zamir White one of your favorites last year? Didn't you play him a lot in DFS?
Yeah.
So I thought they returned all the production from last year. And White at 144 attempts, 779 yards, 11 touchdowns on the ground. The only thing that makes me wonder, though, is since with JT Daniels is the quarterback position to me is upgraded, is they're probably going to throw the ball much more than they did last year. But I think White is too talented. Where he's definitely going to get DFS love, and it's probably going to keep his price down a little bit. So maybe White actually may end up coming as a kind of a lower owned mid price guy. And a quarterback, JT Daniels. He was quarterback was a major issue last year. Stetson Bennett did all he could, but we got JT Daniels now. He can play this position at a high level. It's been a while since he played a full season, but he's a stud. He can definitely run this offense. I have no questions about that. So is he going to be one of my top quarterbacks week one? Would I be using him, first week of playing? I'm not sure, but I do know he actually signed a trading card deal. I'm not sure what the company is, but he's getting it's $100 per signature with 50% in royalties for both signed and unsigned cards, and he's going to share it with all his teammates on a Georgia team. So JT Daniels is a hero with his teammates for Georgia. So for DFS purposes, JT Daniels, Jermaine Burton, Eric Gilbert, and our running back Zamir White.
And I just want to piggyback off here too with Eric Gilbert. He's having some personal issues. So there is a chance he doesn't start the season off. He had to take time away from the team. So there's a lot of stuff going on Twitter. Some people are saying they're not sure he'll play again. Some people are saying, they will come back. But I think he's having some family issues. So that's a big scary thought, with Eric Gilbert.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I did see that too. I'm glad you brought that up. I did see that. I can't remember where I saw it, but you're right.
And then there was one player that I every time I look at Georgia, I keep hearing about is Brock Bowers, this tight end freshman coming in that is a juggernaut of a weapon that they're planning to use for running and putting him out wide, blocking. So keep that name in your thoughts, Brock Bowers. If Eric Gilbert for some reason can't go, Brock Bowers might be that guy. All right. So next team we're going to talk about here is sorry about that. Got her head interrupt me one more time. LSU. So LSU and Missouri. I'm going to finish up with LSU. Juggernaut of a team in 2019 with Joe Burrow. We know that. Then they went through some serious regression last year, and that kind of thing happens when you go through a multitude of QBs for various reasons, injuries, ineptness. They have hired a new offensive coordinator with NFL experience in Jake Peets. He's looking to get him back to that 2019 form. It looked like Miles Brennan was going to be that dude. He looked pretty damn good. In 3 games, he threw 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, over 1,100 yards. I mean, he was slinging it, but he suffered a very serious abdominal injury, took him out for the year. They're saying he might not even be back till mid-season. So Brennan, unfortunately, is not going to be around. We know TJ Finley's off to Auburn because we just talked about that in our Auburn blurb. So it really just leaves Max Johnson as the guy. And I don't know that I'm super enamored with Max Johnson as a DFS player at all. He did throw for over 1,000 yards, last year, 8 touchdowns. He just won on interception. So, good to keep his turnovers down to 6 games. Did complete less than 60% of his passes, though. You'd like to see that closer to 70%. He's got the talent around him. We were just talking about Keyshawn Butte. as being a stud, probably the best receiver in the conference or one of them. So he'll have the bodies to throw to. I'm taking it a little slow with Johnson. I don't want to get into thinking that this guy's going to be like Burrow. If it was Brennan, I'm very high on Brennan, but with him hurt, they got to play with Max Johnson. So we'll see how that turns out. The running game was pretty bad. I mean, it was really bad. We're used to them running at a high level. Their top two guys are back, though. There's something to be said about that continuity. The offensive line should be stronger. Tyreen and Davis Price, he had 104 carries, 446 yards, 3 touchdowns for 4.3 YPC. John Emery, 75 carries, 378, and 3 touchdowns for a YPC of 5. So definitely, got potential between those two. And I think they'll produce a lot better numbers. And if they don't want to rely on Max to have to sling the ball all the time, those guys are more than capable of running it. At the receiver spots, we were just talking about Eric Gilbert. They lose him in the offseason as he continues, like I said, to deal with personal problems. He's suffering. I hope the kid can get through it because he is an all-world talent. But there should be enough talent in his passing game to be pretty DFS viable. Keyshawn Butte, who I've mentioned several times already, should see his numbers go into the stratospheric type of levels, right? He caught 45 passes for 735 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. That was with Terrace Marshall playing for, half the year, 3/4 of the year. Now he's going to be the number one guy. There's no reason he shouldn't sail above 1,000 yards. Big time player. I expect him to be expendy. He'll be kind of one of those guys that you decide between him and probably one of the Ole Miss guys each week, and that's going to be our discussion. Jermaine Jenkins probably going to sneak in there as the number 2 with all the eyes on Keyshawn. Jenkins could be a very nice, 4 or 5K weapon. He did catch 23 passes for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pretty solid numbers. Tight end wise, Cole Taylor. He's a pretty massive target. He's 6'7". So big target for the QB to throw to. I think he'll be a factor with Gilbert gone. He only caught 6 passes for 36 last year, but that number should go up. And then being that they're LSU, it's not hard for a team like LSU to recruit. They have a very heralded group of incoming wide receivers coming in, and that's highlighted by the number 1 prospect out of the state of Mississippi. His name is Dion Smith. They're expecting him to be, a viable option right away. He could even challenge Jenkins for that second spot next to Butte. So don't be surprised to see Dion Smith be a really big option, and he could be one of those guys that comes into it 3.5, 3.7, and as if he gets to start, we're going to be in on him. You don't get to be the number 1 prospect from a state like Mississippi that breeds football players if you're not an elite player. Coy Moore and Trey Palmer are the other 2 guys that are vying for the WR4 spot. Moore caught 22 passes for 177. Palmer caught 19 for 108. So somebody out of that group besides Butte is going to be putting up some stats. My money's probably on Dion Smith, but I do like Jermaine Jenkins as well. He's having a really good camp. And Cole Taylor, the tight end, that 6'7" tight end. I'm a big tight end guy. I think in the red zone, you plop that guy onto the side there, put his hands up, and float it into him for some touchdowns. So that's it for the LSU group. We had somebody in the chat earlier say they should be DFS viable and fun. I agree. I think that there's enough weapons here that will be targeting some of these guys, and things will change. Some of these names we're giving you now will turn out to be nothing. Some of the guys in the the WR6 or 7 slot will end up being studs. That's just how it goes every year. And then the last team, we've covered all of them. We're cruising right along here, is the Missouri Tigers, who have some actual decent options. I kind of like this team as a sneaky DFS team. What do you got for us here?
I do too. And they're not. I'm trying to look. They're ranked like 5th in the SEC. So ahead of just I think they're SEC viable, mainly because probably my favorite. I don't know if you call him a sleeper, but I think Tyler Batty is going to be huge for DFS this year. So he finally, and I've been watching Batty for a while. For some reason, it seems like I've watched. I don't know why, I've watched Missouri games, but he's always wondering what it would look like with Batty as a feature running back in Missouri, and a guy that can actually stay there in all 3, be on the field all 3 downs, make an impact. And we've seen it in flashes. The problem is there's always been another running back there who is pretty damn talented, and that's including Larry Roundtree, Demaric Crockett, guys like that. And now this is finally Batty's show. He's going to be the lead. I've seen he has lost. I mean, he's gained like 12 pounds, so he's ready to be the workhorse and step up to be that Larry Roundtree type back. So one of my favorite DFS plays in the SEC is gonna be Tyler Batty for Missouri. So I'm curious to see what his price is going to be week 1, but I'm probably going to end up playing him. He's going to be I'm assuming he's going to be the bell cow. I mean, he's not a huge guy. He's not imposing like Ray Roundtree was. But let me see how big is he. He's Rush got listed at 5'8", 194. So I mean, it's not that much different from Roundtree, but Roundtree was more of a bruising type running back. But he's also at 2 inches higher, by 10, 15 pounds heavier. But I love Batty this year for DFS purposes. Anybody else on Missouri? Yeah, I mean the quarterback. Connor Bos. How do you say it? Connor Baslick? I guess.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, Baslick is definitely. He actually had a decent season last year. He flew definitely. I think he's gonna fly under the radar this year. He's a sophomore. Is this gonna be a breakout season? I mean, he's definitely gonna be more accurate. I mean, are we gonna be using him a lot for DFS? No, but I think Baslick is definitely capable. I mean, he's a capable quarterback. I mean, so let me see. He completed 68% of his passes, 2,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And I think if I remember right, most of those interceptions came at the last game of the season. Yeah, against Mississippi State. So if you take away the Mississippi State game, he had very few interceptions. So I think Basilak is probably a decent DFS. You want somebody for GPPs. I mean, but that's probably it. For receivers, Damon Hazelton is going to hurt losing Damon Hazelton a little bit. Jalen Knox transferred, so now they got a bunch of new guys. You got Kiki Chisholm. I guess he's a senior, I believe. He's a big kid. He's 6'4". Last year, had 35 catches. Who else we got in Missouri? Telsky Dove, who's a junior. And then I'm really curious about Mookie Cooper.
Yeah, that's the guy right there.
Yeah, he came through Ohio State in the portal, correct? So and I know he's fast, so I'm curious of where Mookie Cooper is going to end up in this depth chart between Chisholm, Dove, Barrett Bannister, I guess, right? He's still there. Micah Wilson, guys like that. But I got a feeling Micah Cooper is not going to be sitting around WR3 for long as the season goes on.
Yeah, he looks good, definitely.
Yeah.
I think the only reason he left Ohio State is because they keep on bringing in on stud wide receivers, and they got guys who are 4-stars that aren't getting time. So, yeah, he should play well. And Dove's like that. He's a sneaky GPP guy. He had a couple of 20 spots last year, if I remember correctly. So he's got a cool name, and he's got some upside. So this Missouri team should not be slept on, definitely. All right, so we got through it, covered the SEC there in just under 90 minutes. A lot to go over, so hopefully you guys can take this information and digest on it. So expect, we had someone in the chat there ask if we could talk about week 0. We're not going to be able to talk about it right now because we need time to study it, of course, and look at pricing and internalize it. But we will have a show. I mean, August 28th, that's, we've got, 10 days. We'll the morning of, we'll do our live stream for that. We'll probably have a podcast the Thursday before covering that. And then, yeah, exactly. And then September 4th, we'll have a show for that. And then the Thursday before. So we will cover that week 0 and week 1 slate. Don't you worry. We'll have content for the betting side, the DFS side, construction, all that stuff. We'll be balls deep in that information. We're still going to be covering CFL every Wednesday as well. You've got your MLB for at least another month. The playoffs start in September, or is it? I know October. It's World Series and all that, but is the playoffs in September?
Almost a good full 2 months, really. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yep. We got that. WNBA still going on. And yeah, so we're going to have lots of stuff. And we're in NFL preseason. We're covering that, esports. So make sure that if you guys aren't a part of the Discord, you definitely join that at the very least and talk in the general room. See what we're about. Check out, we post some of the free articles. And then you can decide if you want to take advantage of that promotion where you get $50 for your first 2 months, which is half off. Usually it's $50 a month, so $25 a month gets you access, as I mentioned at the beginning, cheat sheets, top plays, member-only Discord chats, lineup help, pretty much everything you could possibly need to be a successful player. So expect, we were thinking about getting a preview out of the way for Pac-12. I don't know that we're going to be able to have time. I mean, we'll see. Definitely a show for CFL next Wednesday, a podcast covering the Week 0 slate, and a live show Saturday morning with any last-minute news, injuries, depth charts, all that. So you're going to see our faces or hear our voices a lot coming up for the next few months. Pete, anything you want to say before we head out?
No, I just realized that next Saturday, so in 7 or 8 days, 9 days, we got football starting Week 0. So exciting. It really is. So my blood's getting pumped here just talking about SEC.
Yeah,
listen,
there's
good part of the year. All sports, MLB, NFL, CFB, everything's going on right now.
Yep, and that Week 0, they have a $20K to first GPP, and then Week 1 a $50K to first. They're huge entrants, of course, but big money on the line here. They expect to fill those contests, and CFB, there will be a lot of money for you guys to make. So appreciate everybody who watched us live, or if you're watching on demand. Dub Deuces 85 or YFC. You're gonna have to say your Twitter handle for me. It's YFCP Cola, right?
Yeah, YFCP Cola.
Okay, there it is. All right, YFC Sports Pete. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. We'll see you here in a couple days.
Thanks, guys.